We're back at it again. We have another non-standard type episode for you here today. Today, we're going to be talking about bands whose second album was better than the first. So that could either mean you loved the first album and the second one was even better, you hated the first album and you liked the second one. We're going to find out. There's I'm sure more variations, but it's early in the morning and I can't think of them right now. So if you like the content, if you like to talk about heavy metal and rock, and maybe you have opinions that don't always go with the mainstream, please join the channel, subscribe. You can like the video as well, or any of the other ones you watch. And most importantly, if you want to share this conversation with other people you think would be interested, please do. And make sure you join in the comments. That's the second conversation afterwards, and it's always fun. With all that being said, there are also other ways to support the channel. Links in the description. So check that out if you want to help the channel grow. So with all that out of the way, I'm going to thank our panelists for being here. We got a great panel. A lot of people showed up today. There's a lot of
David's got the best panel. Take a look.
That's right.
That's a bad pun. That's bad.
Touche.
Bonus dad jokes today for free. So there you go. I'm going to thank all of you at home for watching as well. But let's keep it moving right along. So we're going to go around one time, and everyone's going to give their pick, and then we'll go around second time real quick to give some honorable mentions. So all that out of the way, in no particular order, let's start with Bicycle Legs today. Bicycle Legs, what is an album that you think is better than the first album that band put out?
Okay, well, this is actually a band I just talked about last weekend on my own channel. And that is Roxy Music. So Roxy Music's first album, simply called Roxy Music. Really good album. They, I describe it as like the side one, they take sort of traditional song styles and subvert them with strange sort of arrangements and that sort of thing. And then side two, they get more experimental. Brian Eno was in the band at the time, and he would do these sort of strange synth treatments and sort of tape effects and all that sort of thing. And that would come along more in the songs on side two than it did on side one. But it's a really good album. I mean, it starts with Remake Remodel, which is one of their greatest songs. But then they bring out their second album, For Your Pleasure. And For Your Pleasure is my favorite Roxy Music album. I don't know whether that's a contrarian choice or not, but it starts with possibly, I think, the best Roxy Music song ever, which is Do the Strand. And then again, it kind of follows the same formula as the first album, where the songs on side one are more sort of traditional song styles, but subverted with strange arrangements. And then side two gets, on this particular album, even more experimental. You have a song like The Bogus Man, which kind of ventures into krautrock. And then you have Grey Lagoons is a little more traditional. It's a slightly shorter song. But then you get For Your Pleasure, the title track at the end, which Eno really goes completely nuts with his synth treatments and tape treatments and all that sort of thing. And to me, as much as I love the first album, the second album is the ultimate Roxy Music album, my favorite. So there you go, Roxy Music.
Nice. Good one.
You know what the city that is on that cover?
No?
It's Las Vegas.
Oh, there you go.
Nice.
I used to live there.
Okay.
And I lost all gambling.
52 years ago when I was in the Air Force. That's where I was stationed.
You still recognize the skyline. Very nice.
Yeah, you can see the Stardust hotel signs no longer there.
Oh. Well, thanks, Bicycle Legs. That was, I mean, that was short and sweet, but yeah, that's great. We'll keep it moving right along then, and we'll be coming back to Bicycle Legs a little later in the episode for some honorable mentions. So let's keep it going. We're going to go over to Uncle Meat. Let's hear your selection.
Hello, everybody, and I found this an interesting topic, and I think for some people they might be talking about one, you know, it's maybe not a great album, and then you have a better album. I'd like to talk about one that I think is a very good album, and it just became much better on the second one. And that band is King's X. In the spring of 1988, they released their debut, which was Out of the Silent Planet, which is a great album, and they kind of, almost made a new sound up, and it was received well, and then 1 year later, they came out with Gretchen Goes to Nebraska, and I find that album to be very complete. I kind of look at it like with Out of the Silent Planet, they created this tasty main dish, and then with Gretchen, it's like they gave you that same tasty main dish, but it was a 4-course meal. The songs were better. And I think about the first 3 songs, the way it starts off. It starts off with Out of the Silent Planet, a song that was so good that it had to be on the second album. And then Over My Head and Summertime, you're like right off the bat, songs that could have been hits if it was different. And then I'll Never Be the Same and Mission and Pleiades, like it gets to the point that when you look at the track listing of Gretchen, it's almost hard to find deep tracks because so many songs are prominent. I just love, it's interesting because I have some very big King's X fans with a bunch of my friends, and I'd say that every one of them, and in lists that I've seen and been a part of, people always rate Gretchen higher. So to me, it just seemed like a perfect thing to say. A very good album, but that went to a great album, and that's my choice.
Nice.
Great choice.
Awesome.
Love that band. Love them.
Thanks.
Yeah, awesome. Oh, voice crack there.
MTV
Awesome.
played over my head for months. It was
Indeed.
really great.
Well, thanks, Uncle Meat. That's awesome. And again, we'll be coming back for some honorable mentions. So stay frosty. All right, Davy, you're up next.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever folks happen to be watching. Yeah, I mean, as Tyler and Ryan can attest, we ended up kind of going over this after a video we made together the other night, coming up with about 300 between us. So it was rather hard to whittle that down. Ostensibly, I guess I'll pick this one because it's an example of the scene changed, so therefore the sound changed with it, and the band were better placed to come up with a second album that sounded different, and ultimately suits their agenda further going forwards, and that would be Jethro Tull. So starting out with This Was, which is obviously a much more blues-based album, fits in much more with Chicken Shack and the Groundhogs and the like. And it's a terrific record, and there's a lot of really good originals on it, Song for Jeffrey and Cat Squirrel and whatnot. It's a terrific record for what it is, and there were some staples that would come from that. But then to move on to Stand Up as your second album, it's just light years ahead of it. So all of a sudden we're into 1970, and like the flick of a light switch with the turn of the decade, it's as though, and of course the obligatory, you have to do that whenever you talk about stand-up, the obligatory stand-up itself, they can move away from that more blues-based sound as things have progressed, almost literally, hence progressive rock, of course, beyond that kind of sound from 68, where people are still in the blues boom and whatnot. That's a little bit passé. Jethro Tull had already come along a little bit late in the game for that. So they were able to move into this more slightly pastoral version of folk that would turn into folk rock, progressive rock, and sometimes just hard rock. Never quite metal as the Grammys thought, but hey, I mean, to kick off with A New Day Yesterday is just pretty much a mission statement. You know, that pretty much tells you. And Jeffrey's back, of course. He goes to Leicester Square in this one. Nothing is easy, of course, one of your true Jethro Tull classics. And it's just a fantastic example of a second album that owes very little to pretty much the same band. Obviously, getting a new guitar player in place with Martin Barr joining for the first time. But it owes little to that first album. It could have existed in its own universe if that hadn't have happened, which I quite like. Whereas a lot of the other ones on my list were evolution, not revolution from the first, whereas this one very much is something new under the sun. So yeah, Jethro Tull, stand up. So
Nice. Excellent choice.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, their first record was called This Was because they'd kind of already moved on by the time they recorded that album.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they called it This Was rather than This Is.
Neat.
Well, they look 300 years old on the cover.
Yeah, I was gonna say it should have been called We Was.
Yeah. Ian Anderson was born at the age of 42. So.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Davy. Great review as always. Although I suppose it's a shorter review than we're used to, but great nonetheless.
You told me it'd be short. Do you want me to keep going?
No.
Yeah.
I'm just surprised. Everyone's being so concise. This is we're gonna have plenty of time for our honorable mentions. But let's keep it moving along. Let's go to Ryan next. Ryan, second album that's better than the first. Let's hear your choice.
All right. So yeah, when I was coming up with this, like Davey said, I mean, we all had probably like 50 plus each for this list, and I'll mention some other ones in the honorable mentions, but the one I'm going to choose today is one of my favorite albums of all time. It's at least top 15, I would say, maybe top 10. I don't know. It goes back and forth because I hear so much great music all the time, but this one always is near and dear to my heart. Talking about Funhouse by the Stooges. So when I first heard the Stooges, it was actually the debut album, and I was like, this is good. Like, it's, you know, it's not extremely unique. It sounds very much like a lot of the other psych garage rock bands at the time. I liked it. I thought it had cool John Cale production and stuff. I like Iggy on there. There was some cool riffs. There was some good droney stuff on it. But when I was working at the record, well, I am working there still now, but one day when I was working at the record store, I was looking at this album cover. I'm like, this is just one of the coolest album covers I've ever seen. I love this color palette and stuff. It's very artistic and interesting. And so I put the album on, and right from the beginning with Down on the Street, I was just blown away. I was just like, all right, this is a very different Stooges here. A lot more hard-edged, a lot more aggressive, kind of more lo-fi production in some ways. Just heavier, experimental in some ways. I mean, the first one was kind of experimental at times, but you know, you got Loose on here, which is really heavy and aggressive. TVI, which is an absolute classic. I mean, that's just one of my favorite songs to just put on and just drive fast to. It's just so heavy for 1970. And Dirt, which is a classic, like slower, more chill song. I really love Iggy's vocal performance on this one. He just gives so much attitude and so much feeling, so much grit with that awesome bass riff too. Just classic stuff there. And then you go to the second side and you got 1970, which is an absolute classic. I mean, it's been covered multiple times at this point now. It's just a classic, like little pinpoint of the time. And then my probably favorite song on the track, on the album, Funhouse, which is such a great track. You have that blistering saxophone on this song, along with the heavy guitar riff. It's just absolute classic. I mean, my friends and I, we would just, at my request, every single time, we would just put this album on while we were painting, actually, at our apartment. because we would just like to put on different albums and stuff and paint to them and stuff. And I always be like, let's put on the Funhouse. It's such a great painting album because it just brought out so much, like, I guess, like, anger that I was holding in and stuff at the time, and it would really show on the canvas by the time I was done. It would just be really cool. And yeah, I just love that song. And LA Blues, which is real aggressive, very like kind of, I'd say kind of like proto-punky experimental jazz mixed into each other. Just really awesome. I mean, I just think for me, this is the greatest Stooges album, at least in my opinion. I know a lot of people will say Raw Power too, and I love that album to death. I mean, these are 3 classic albums, and then we have okay stuff after that later on. But the first 3 Stooges albums are drop dead classics, but I think this one's the best one. It just, I feel like you hear Iggy at his peak in the band. I feel like you hear the band coalescing together at their best with that raw, punky, hard-edged energy that was just so welcome in 1970. So yeah, my second choice is gonna be Funhouse by Stooges.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good one.
Nice.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. All right, we're gonna just keep going. We're gonna go over to Tyler next.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for allowing me to come on once again. And I'm just going to go by my time. It's 8:24 a.m. So good morning, everybody. Davy said it and Ryan said it. We were really discussing this for a very long time. All 3 of us came up with 50 plus records. It was absolutely chaotic. So I may or may not have quite a few honorables. But I'm going to go with what I consider one of my favorite bands of all time. I wouldn't be the music freak that I am today without these guys, and it was just a blatantly obvious pick for me. It's probably a pretty obvious pick as well because this album is universally loved, definitely compared to the debut from 1973. This is the first record to be produced by the great Jack Douglas. Coming out in 1974. Get Your Wings, Aerosmith. Classic, fantastic record, front to back. I mean, you do have the debut from 1973. And while I think the debut is a really good record, I mean, you got awesome tracks like Make It, Moving Out. Obviously, everybody knows Dream On, but you have Walking the Dog. But you also have a little bit of clunkers. For example, I was never big on One Way Street. Or Write Me a Letter is kind of a song I can definitely throw out. But Get Your Wings is probably my top 3 favorite Aerosmith records of all time. Fantastic record front to back. I mean, you have Same Old Song and Dance. What a bluesy rockin' number that is. I mean, that riff. So simplistic, yet so effective. Love that song to death. And of course, you have Lord of the Thighs to follow that up. You know, Joey Kramer coming out with that killer, but obviously the live bootleg is definitely far superior. This far superior version. Spaced, such a beautiful track. So it's very spacey, very psychedelic, kind of like a Stonesy thing Aerosmith is doing. And then speaking of a kind of like a Stonesy feel, you have Woman of the World, which is definitely one of my personal favorites on this record. Classic song, but then this record gets really punky with SOS Too Bad. Ooh, killer track. But then you have Train Kept a Rolling on here. That's one of the tracks I'm getting a little sick of that track personally. It's still a really good track, but I might be a little burnt out by that track, just a little bit. But it goes right into one of my personal favorite Aerosmith tracks of all time, Seasons of Wither. Beautiful, beautiful track front to back. And then it ends with Pandora's Box, another classic Aerosmith. But yeah, this was a no-brainer. I love this album to death. First album to feature Jack Douglas producing, and obviously we know Jack Douglas. He would go on to produce, Toys in the Attic, Rocks, Draw the Line, coming back for Rock and Hard Place, and we all know Jack Douglas, fantastic career. But yeah, easy pick. I don't truly think Aerosmith found their sound perfectly on this record. I think they truly found their sound on the record to come after, Toys in the Attic. My personal favorite being Rocks. But they really found their sound in Toys in the Attic. But this is a damn near close interpretation of what Aerosmith will become in, a year or two later. So yeah, Aerosmith, Get Your Wings. This was an absolute no-brainer. Love this record to death. There
Nice.
you go.
Cool.
Right.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Tyler.
Thank you.
Let's and thanks for being here, by the way. We
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thank you for asking me.
Yeah.
Woo!
And let's keep going right along. We'll go over to Rand. We'll do David after, and then we'll end off with Martin. So Rand, the podium is yours.
Yeah, thank you. The reason I left the room is because Davy stole my Tull. But my number one is a band that it's kind of strange. They didn't really want to be a band. They just wanted to write songs for other people. And then they met this guy that took them under his wing and gave them their name. And they put out an album that sounds kind of like Go Now, Moody Blues, and Bee Gees. And that album, my throat's messed up today. That album is this. From Genesis to Revelation. And it is sort of like their first album. I mean, it is their first album. Then their second album is like Ben-Hur compared to like some stupid movie that was never good. This to me is a masterpiece, second album. I mean, it doesn't, I love this little thing because it does this, But I just think this album is phenomenal as far as the jump that they made from the first one to full on prog. I mean, this album is great. I love this. Is Trespass by any, if nobody knows, Genesis Trespass. And it's the same musicians, except maybe the drum. I think the drummer's different. Chris Stewart's on that one, and this is John Mayhew. But other than that, it's Rutherford, Banks, Gabriel, and Phillips. And I think Anthony Phillips is an unsung hero on this album. And the only really reason that he left and Steve Hackett came in on the third album is because he just didn't want to tour. He got stage fright and just wanted to stay in the studio and make great albums, which he did. He does. Anthony Phillips solo stuff is great, but I think the jump is just light years better.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, yeah, another very short but sweet one. Appreciate it. Thanks, Rand. All right, we're gonna go over to David next. So David, the floor is yours.
Hi. Hello to anybody I didn't get to say hello to yet.
Morning.
So this is how I chose to do this exercise. Immediately I thought of that saying that goes around, an artist has their entire life to complete their first album. And so this is an excessive wealth of time for this prelude. And usually that first album sound is synonymous with the band sound. Like if the band stopped making music afterwards, it would just be that album is that band. And for the time it takes to make a second album, the audience is sort of allowed to see what parts, of that band they want to, majorly evolve, only minorly alter, or we can all think of a band right now where they don't change at all, right? If you think of an example in your head. But what happens when a band gets it so right on the debut that it's such a risk to go anywhere at all, and sort of the weight of the world is on your shoulders. So when I heard about what second albums are the best second albums, this is honestly I didn't want to do this because it's kind of talked about quite a bit, maybe not so much on Contrarians, but I thought of this, and this is my pick.
What's the story, Morning Glory? Yeah.
So, now, for the viewers that are in America, we have a very different experience with Oasis than a lot of the people around the rest of the world. But for the What's the Story Morning Glory album cycle, we pretty much were on the same page as the rest of the world. They were massive here at the time. And that's kind of like part and parcel of when you talk about Oasis, everything is usually like big and overblown. That being said, I picked this album because I thought it was very hard to outdo a first album like that. Now, if the first album Oasis did definitely maybe came out in 1994, it was the fastest selling debut. It sold a lot initially, and there was no reason for them to have to really change too much of the formula. And they also were they could milk that album for the rest of their lives, for instance. You could just do that. It was that good. I always like to make allusions to Guns N' Roses when I talk about Oasis. Oasis is like one of my top 5 favorite bands, by the way. So they had already broke records and become successful. What happened in this situation is they could have remained that exact same band because they've already been sort of validated by the public, or, you know, do something different. Not only did this album do something different, but it became a separate blueprint for the band moving forward and the artists on, you know, included on the band. So the remainder of this band's existence, and then after they broke up in 2009, the main songwriters, the Gallagher brothers, would always sort of like go back to the sound that was either on the second album or the first album. So let's just talk about what they did different. So the production is completely different on the second album. It's a lot more lush and polished. Owen Morris is the producer that's responsible for a lot of this influence into the band. They have a new drummer Alan White, not from Yes, but again, we have an Alan White that comes over and takes over the original drum. The first drummer was just kind of like a garage bandy type of drummer. They needed to take it to another level. So they got a really, really good drummer. And Noel Gallagher sort of steps out as, looking back now, as sort of this is kind of his album. What I'll explain with that is that Noel Gallagher is the main songwriter of Oasis. Liam is the brother that sings him. On the first album, there's no songs really where Noel sings at all, maybe some backing vocals. On the second album, one of the biggest singles that Oasis have is Don't Look Back in Anger, which Noel sings. So now you have one of the biggest, probably the most enduring song at this point, as far as worldwide audience goes. And we can take Ariana Grande for that bit. But that is Noel's song. And that is the song that made him confident enough that with future releases, he would be on vocals more often. And eventually he would go off and start his own band after Oasis broke up with High Flying Birds. Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds, his current band, is basically based on what ground they broke on this second album. So, sorry, I forget what my place where I'm at here, but there's a lot of growth on this second Oasis album. They completely changed their mission statement from being this like loud and raucous, like a bunch of lads, to serious songwriters who don't want to be embarrassed when they're seeing that they can't really do too much else than what they're doing. Noel's presence, confidence that he achieved around this time is reflective in certain songs which aren't on the album but are on B-sides. Most specifically, the Master Plan. The Master Plan is pretty much the blueprint for like Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds, at least initially. It's a great song. A lot of people don't know it because it's a B-side, but part of the lore behind Oasis is that those great collection of B-sides that they have holding up for posterity's sake. Noel would go on during this album cycle to do the infamous MTV Unplugged concert, which is my favorite Unplugged. And what's great about it is that Liam didn't sing, so Noel sang all of the songs that they were touring around the world at the time. It's the first time you got to see Noel sing the songs that he demos. And back at the time, it was just sort of like, yeah, Noel sings a song here and there. Liam's still the main member, main singer in the band. But when you look back, 20 years, 25 years now, 20 years, and so you look back a few decades, you can see that those were the beginnings of Noel just sort of branching out. So in a sense, like, that is the blueprint for what he wanted to, what he thought was distilled his best craft, and he just sort of like focused on that. Other things that he tried out, he didn't lean towards that, those specific colors, if you will, like, or sounds moving forward. He kind of stuck to, I know that this works, so I'm not going to mess around with it. And that is why I'm picking this this album. It's Noel, it's the production, and the drummer is a huge leap forward. Thank you.
Nice.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah. Thanks, David.
Seminal album. Seminal.
Awesome. All right. Well, last but certainly not least, we're going to throw it over to Martin for his pick. So, Martin, take it away.
Okay, I'll go with Motorhead Overkill today. You know, it's almost like the band went from black and white to color, just like the album cover. And I've told the story before about finding this album in the racks in Strawberry Jams and like leaping up and whooping and almost hitting my head on this low wooden beam above, because you see the Snaggletooth looking like that versus the debut, and it made a huge impact. But you know, basically that first album was recorded almost as a lark. They were sent in to do a single with Speedy King. They just stayed up on speed all night and kind of made an entire record. Fast Eddie is in the band now, but he's only in on the songwriting on a couple of songs. You get to Overkill. He's in there writing everything. And basically Overkill, you're also onto Bronze Records, and they have this long, you know, association with Bronze. It kind of works out. It's more or less a rewarding, linking up there with Jerry Braun. And, you know, Overkill is famed for the, the double bass drumming throughout. So there's kind of a historic double bass drumming thing going on here with Filthy Animal. Stay Clean. I Won't Pay Your Price. I'll Be Your Sister. I'll Be Your Sister was always our favorite Motorhead song as a kid for a while there, because that's a cool, heavy one with kind of a neat groove to it. Capricorn, No Class. Every song on this, I've often rated this album as the heaviest album from the entire 1970s, because every single song is heavy. That was a rare thing for us. There was the Sex Pistols album, Rainbow Rising, AC/DC, Let There Be Rock kind of fit here. Bomber came out in 79, so that also fits. But I think this is probably, there's the first Heavy Load album with kind of an obscurity. But basically, it's got 10 songs. Every single one is heavy. Every single one of them sounds more modern than the best songs on the debut, which is really, really scrappy, bluesy, even kind of poppy with Motorhead and Vibrator, kind of boring here and there. It just seems like a really haphazard album that you almost feel sorry for, that first Motorhead. So that first Motorhead and March or Die or 1916 are the ones often cited as the least beloved Motorhead albums. I think this is a big step up. So yeah, I'm going to go with Overkill, and I'll just rattle into my my honorable mentions then. So I'll say, we're just going to name these, right? So Judas Priest, Sad Wings of Destiny, Saxon, Wheels of Steel, Rainbow Rising, I had Get Your Wings, and I had Genesis Trespass, Black Sabbath, Paranoid, Derringer, Sweet Evil, Clash, Give 'Em Enough Rope, Metallica, Ride the Lightning, The Saints, Eternally Yours, Rush, Fly By Night, and Riot, Narita.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Great picks.
All right. Let's reverse the order. Let's go back around the other way. So David, let's get your honorable mentions.
I didn't spend too much time on this, but I did think of a couple that were different than my main Morning Glory. I thought of Paul's Boutique by the Beastie Boys. I think that's a lot of times regarded as like one of the Godfather 2s of the music canon of the past few decades. Beastie Boys, Paul's Boutique deals with a lot more sampling of different sounds and then just going in their own direction instead of like the big hit album License to Ill from '86. So that's got more of a critical but not as much of a commercial success. I'm leaning towards what critical is what matters, or what I think of it. Another album I thought of was, I'm going to leave it at Beastie Boys. That's all good.
Awesome.
I forgot the other one. Sorry.
All right.
It's
No
early,
worries.
don't worry.
Rand, got any honorable mentions you'd like to mention?
Yeah, I've got two. This band, Gentle Giant, their debut, Gentle Giant, is a great album, and definitely a different sound than their original Simon Dupree and the Big Sound, which I've never even heard, but I've read about it many times.
It's okay.
So their second album is called Acquiring the Taste, and this is a damn gem, man. This is so good. Then the other band I picked was this group,
Mhm.
I didn't start with this
Yeah.
album. I didn't know about it. I started with this album. And this is my favorite Emerson, Lake and Palmer album. And I think Tarkus just blows the first one out of the water just from side one. A lot of people put down side two. I have no problem with it. I love the whole album.
Awesome. Well, thanks,
Nice.
Rand. Tyler, let's get your honorable mentions.
Yeah. So I have Ozzy, Diary of a Madman. Always found this record way superior than Blizzard of Oz. So there you go, Diary of a Madman.
Oh yeah.
We got Megadeth, Peace Sells. Classic thrash masterpiece right here. Skid Row, Slave to the Grind. This is not a glam record. This is a full-on borderline thrash record, if you were to ask me. Classic record. I do have Metallica, Ride the Lightning, and speaking of thrash, right here. I do have King Diamond with Abigail. Classic record. Judas Priest, Sad Wings of Destiny. Easy pick. And to shift things into a whole different aspect, I have the freewheeling Bob Dylan. Possibly my favorite Bob Dylan record. Brilliant record. And Rush, Fly By Night. To be honest, never big on the debut. The debut, something about it just never worked for me. This is just a gigantic step up. So there you go, Rush. And last but not least, Dio, Last in Line. There you go. I said it. I think this album is definitely far superior than Holy Diver. There you go. Kill me, shoot me, do whatever you want. I think
Let's
this
do it,
record's
Tyler.
superior.
Let's do it. Yeah.
It's
So, yeah.
true.
All
There you
right.
go.
Well, Tyler, you're a brave man. All right. Thanks.
We've
Tyler.
got his back. Don't worry.
Absolutely.
We'll keep going. Ryan, you want to list off your honorable mentions?
Yeah, for sure. So first of all, I got Prince's second album, Prince. I think it's far superior to For You. I did say Sad Wings, Ride the Lightning, Closer by Joy Division. Get Your Wings, Fly By Night, Paul's Boutique, Reckoning by REM. Everybody knows This Is Nowhere by Neil Young, Verses by Pearl Jam, Funhouse, Stooges, I said already, Louder Than Love by Soundgarden, Paranoid by Black Sabbath, Easy Action, 5,000 Spirits by the Incredible String Band, Tyranny and Mutation by Blue Oyster Cult, Diary of a Madman, Acquiring the Taste, Space Rid, Free for All, Queen 2, Transformer by Lou Reed, The Wild, The Willing, The Innocent, and the E Street Shuffle by Bruce Springsteen, Van Halen 2, Absolutely Free by The Mothers, Hot Rats by Frank Zappa, Rio Grande Mud, Hot by ZZ Top, Hot Buttered Soul by Isaac Hayes, More Songs About Buildings and Food by the Talking Heads, and 17 Seconds by The Cure.
Nice.
Yeah, nice.
Oh,
You
nice.
guys weren't kidding. You
Nice.
guys bring some good.
Nice.
No,
Boys
no,
are
we weren't.
Yeah.
Still annoyed about that Talking Heads one, but okay.
Awesome.
Prepared to
Thanks.
be annoyed again, Davey.
Well, thanks, Ryan. Davey, let's get your honorable mentions.
Okay. Yeah, so again, some of these will be repetition, but regardless. Arcade Fire's Neon Bible. Neil Young, Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere. Robin Trower, Bridge of Sighs. The Band. Budgie, Squawk. Alice in Chains, Dirt. Camel, Mirage. Cream,
Yeah.
Disraeli. Cream, yes, damn right. You testify, brother. Cream, Disraeli Gears. David Bowie, Space Oddity. Elton John, self-titled. I had Tarkus too. Genesis. I think I was just being a little bit here because I put down Nirvana, Nevermind, but we don't need to start that comment section again. Creedence Clearwater Revival, Bayou Country over self-titled. Love, Da Capo. Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell, because people forget that debut album with the female singer, Stoney Meatloaf. The Almonds, Idlewild South over self-titled. Nick Drake, Brighter Later over Five Leaves Left, which has got John Cale on it, and he's my next pick as well, because Paris 1919 would come over Vintage Violence for me. The Butterfield Blues Band, East West. The Pogues, Rum, Sodomy and the Lash. Public Enemy, It Takes a Nation, a Million to Hold Us Back. Richard Thompson, I Want to See the Bright Lights. Sly Stone, Dance to the Music. The Smiths, Hatful of Hollow. Van Morrison, Astral Weeks. Squeeze, Cool for Cats. The Stranglers, No More Heroes. Tears for Fears, Songs from the Big Chair. The Infected. Warren's Evon, self-titled. Wilco, Being There. Wishbone Ash, Pilgrimage. The Yardbirds, Having a Rave Up. And the Zombies, Odyssey and Oracle.
Nice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Another great list.
Yeah,
Uncle
a
Nate?
lot of people don't remember that Warren Zevon's self-titled album is actually his second,
that's
rather than his
69.
first.
Yeah, he did it when he was looking like Andy Warhol.
The Wanted Dead or Alive album. Yeah.
It's rubbish.
Oh, it's not that bad.
It's rubbish.
Oh, save it for another episode. We'll all right, Uncle Meat, you're up.
Okay, I listing through the ones that I was thinking about. A Radiohead, the Bends, a Robert Plant, the Principal Moments, a Canadian band called Rheostatics with their second album that's called Melville. I had Paul's Boutique on there. The band Caius. The first album, Wretch, was just not them, and then Chris Goss joined, and Blues for the Red Sun was extremely important. Dream Theater, they certainly improved everything with the album, of the second album, and I would say Pearl Jam Versus and Black Crowes, Southern Harmony, and one last one that might be contrarian to some people, but I say when you add Adrian Smith and Martin Birch, your second album is better, and that's Iron Maiden with Killers. So.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Yeah, I was actually gonna mention that if no one did, just because that's also my my favorite Iron Maiden album. Thanks, Uncle Meat. All right, Bicycle Legs. We'll get your honorable mentions in there.
Okay, a couple of quick ones, and then I've got a couple that I actually pulled some records out. So I was going to say Killers over Iron Maiden's debut album. A contrarian one for people who are fans of this band. I actually think that Duty Now for the Future by Devo is a better album than Are We Not Men? That is a very contrarian choice, but it's possibly my favorite Devo album. But the two I picked out were Elvis Costello, starting off with My Aim Is True, which I think is a really good album, but I think that this year's model is a better album because it's got the Attractions on it. And I think the songs are better on this one. And then the other one I did pull out, and this has already been mentioned, was Talking Heads. So you have 77, great album. Then you have More Songs About Buildings and Food, which I think is a better album, not necessarily because the songs are better, but I think the production is much better because you've got Brian Eno on board by this stage. But then, just to break the mold a little bit, I think the third album, Fear of Music, is even better still because this is my favorite Talking Heads album. So there you go. Those are my choices.
Nice.
Awesome. Nice little subversion of the format at the end there with the third. All right. Well, there you have it. There are a bunch, and at the end there we've got a massive list of second albums that are better than the first. Why don't you at home let us know in the comments if there's any you feel were missed. Maybe you disagree with some of the choices. That's what the comment section is for. We want to hear your thoughts as well. But I want to thank all of our panelists for being here today and for a great conversation that we got. I want to thank all of you at home for being there and supporting the channel. Like I said at the start, if you want to support the channel, there are ways to do that in the description. There's Patreon, there's TeePublic, there's Ko-fi. I always forget the names, but luckily that's what the description is for. So all the links are in there. But most importantly, please share this with your friends and family if you want to expand the conversation, if you think they'd be interested in it. And thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to our panelists. And whether it's a morning, night, or during the day, have a good one. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
later.
Bye.
Take care.
Thanks.
Take care.